Welcome to Discuss With Us podcast, where we are unpacking the world through a Christian lens. I am your host, Darcy Durkowski, along with my husband, Brian, and our intention is to pose topics, trending and otherwise, and unpack them with the help of some research, insights from our different backgrounds, and even some listener input in a way that is thought-provoking and entertaining. So get comfortable, grab your favorite beverage, and discuss with us.
Welcome back to another episode of Discuss With Us. Darce, is that your line now?
No, it's not. It's all you. Missed
back.
you last week.
Yeah. We lived together. You did this without me.
Yeah. You were out on a gig.
Yeah.
Made sense.
Busy weekend, and it was actually good because I don't know if I should say this or not, but I don't always listen to the episodes because I feel weird about listening back to myself.
Yeah, no, I don't either. I only listen when we have a
Sometimes
guest on.
Yeah, I do that, but I usually just fast forward to where they're talking.
Yeah.
So I was able to listen to the episode, and I didn't know it was coming. It was good.
Yeah, the first day though, he hadn't listened to it after it was released, and I was like, if you don't listen to our episode this week, having not heard it, I'm gonna hang this up.
It's not
no pressure.
It's not in my normal. I would download it every week, but it's not in my normal queue because I only listen for specific things. So
it is weird to listen to
throw
yourself
off my
back.
routine there of podcasting, but it was good. I liked it. I actually took a lot from it. I thought you guys did a great job.
Thanks.
And I guess maybe my spot's up for grabs. I don't know.
Nah. No, it's funny because Monday morning last week started off really early for me. I was driving to Kingwood for work, and at 6:30 in the morning, I'm on the road, and I get a phone call, and it's like, oh, this day is already not shaping up. And I was in a terrible mood, and I was like trying to figure out how to handle it with work. And then I finally got to the point where I was like, I'm not even going to act like it's a big deal. I'm going to listen to my podcast and because I always like to, if we have a guest on, I like to check audio and listen back. So I listened to the episode. I ended up listening to the whole thing, I'm not going to lie. And I was very encouraged by it for myself. And by the time I got to Kingwood for work, I was happy. I was like, I'm just going to be happy.
Hey, it worked.
It did work.
I did. My one of my favorite points out of it was how everyone focuses on the negative things, like what
negative
drives
psychology.
depression. Yeah. Instead of focusing on the happiness, I was like, that is fascinating. And when we're describing things, we don't start from our place of happiness too. So
yeah,
we are normally talking about all negative things. Kind of leads into where we are today, I guess.
A little bit. So our topic today, we were trying to figure out what we were going to talk about, and I thought this was last week. And so again, we've said this 100 times, but we have to talk about like what we're actually talking about in our house.
Yeah.
What we're actually discussing. That's the only way it works.
It makes this go faster, so.
Yeah. And last week, what was on my mind was some certain friends of mine, acquaintances, people I follow on social media, but went to school with, all that stuff. Going through kind of a shocker of a week.
Well, there was multiple things all over the place.
Things, yes, and so that's what this is going to be. Kind of funny the way we tied all this together, but the initial thought was I was thinking about all of the folks out there that represented Beachbody. Now it's Body because it went public and everything. All those typically moms that had made a living, and for some of them it was like supplemental. For some of them it's their whole shebang. Their whole job, and the company announced last week that basically they're eliminating that position. And so I think it was resonating with me because I've been in that spot somewhat recently.
You have.
and I just could not stop thinking about them. And I was like, well, we're not gonna do an episode over, bodies
I
restructuring.
would have nothing to talk about there. You could
Even
have
though
somebody else on.
you say that we talk about the business side of things
Yeah, that's true.
sometimes,
That's
but it
true.
would get boring real quick. Let's just say that.
A little bit.
Yeah. And so I was like, how can, between that and then there was the port strike going on. And I told Brian, I was like, why don't we talk about uncertainty?
Yeah. So how the sausage is made over here is I would say you drive it most of the time as far as like coming up with the topic
Mm-hmm.
initially, or at least you're the one asking. But we have a really solid formula for how we get these out. We will come up with a topic really broad like that, uncertainty. And then we both just go about the rest of our week coming up with, okay, let's put that on paper or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is another prime example of then we meet up like 15 minutes before we put these headphones on and, okay, what did you think about this? And it's usually two completely different things.
Yeah. And not really here.
Well,
It
they
usually
both
works.
fall under. They all fall
complement.
under the umbrella, but it works because it's
Yeah.
not always group.
Well,
We're
at
talking
least
about
my
different
mom
stuff.
thinks it works. She listens.
Yeah,
She asked where her podcast was this morning when we didn't drop it on time.
that was on you, not on me.
Yeah, I had a migraine last night. I could not have done it. But yeah, and we come up here, we don't even, whenever we hash out the outline, we try not to get too much into the conversation because we want to leave it all for on
just
air.
fresh for y'all. Yeah. So that's why this is super professional over here.
Yeah, okay, we're getting off topic already. So, anyways, I was thinking about all of those folks out there that I know that are facing, specifically all of the body people, people working for body. That feels weird to say because in my head it's with an I, but body with an I. So, and a lot of them, they're putting on a positive face, but like they are in a tough spot, and that was just really kind of heavy on my mind last week, and still is because they're still working through it. It's been a week.
Well, you know what makes it worse?
Hmm.
Their whole job is
A
social
community.
media.
Yes.
And so it's not something like you went through something similar
Yeah.
last year. Was it last year?
Mm-hmm.
Your position
over
your position
year and
was
a half.
eliminated.
Yeah.
But you know what? You got to suffer in silence because nobody knew.
Yeah. Exactly.
Only
No,
the
it is
people you told. Whereas this is a little different because when you I don't have social media, so I didn't see this coming. But when it happened on your end, it's also like
You're waiting for people to be like to confirm
say
it.
something.
To say something.
And so I can
You're
imagine
facing uncertainty.
Yeah, it's like it's really like I guess you would say like influencer status or like
Yes.
minor celebrity. Like when things happen, it was like a little
It's very
taste
public.
of kind of like a more local thing
Mm-hmm.
of people having to like make their social media statements because there were just a lot of people wondering.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
awkward situation. After
It is. It is. And it's just definitely not a
For
fun
anyone
way
who's
to...
ever changed a job or had something happen in their job, think about having to tell everyone you know.
Yes.
I mean,
no, that's a really good point.
that was one of the things my head went to. It like, I couldn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously that is tough to face, and we're saying it like really lightheartedly here, but really this is going to restructure their lives. And that's kind of what I was getting at with uncertainty is, and there's different scenarios. We're not just talking about this, your job being affected. I was, as like Brian said, we kind of think about it for the next few days. And the other things that were coming to me is I have an old acquaintance who went through an unimaginable loss here recently. And so grief, I think, is definitely, it brings to the surface uncertainty because it's like everybody, you can't help but like dream and kind of project your what your future's going to look like.
I'm the worst at it. I'm a long-term planner.
Well, worst and best. Like, it works for your good a lot of the times. But when things like this happen and you're faced with such uncertainty, it's like what you thought the trajectory you thought your life was going to take has suddenly taken a very hard turn.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, like when you're talking about your job, maybe it kind of gets back, it has the opportunity to get back on track, if that's what you want, if that's what God has for you. But with grief, it's like, I think that's what hits people a lot of the time is like, it will never look like what I thought it was going to look like.
Yes.
Again. Same thing with like divorce. Couples that are staring down divorce. You've got this planned out kind of future in your head, and suddenly it's taken a hard, different course.
You thought of a lot of things I didn't.
And then people in the path of Helene, and then upcoming Milton.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, their houses are gone. Their cities are demolished in a lot of cases. And so their life is just going to look a lot different, at least short term, than it did.
Yeah.
Uncertainty. And then the other one that you and I were talking about last week was, it's over now, but like the port strike. And so the tendency is for, in all of these situations for us, this uncertainty causes like panic.
Yes.
The toilet paper's bought. And all of these things, and just almost also for you to just kind of retreat into yourself a little bit because of the uncertainty. And so I wanted to talk about that on this episode. And my disclaimer for this is I did not, when I was bringing up this topic, I told Brian, I said, I don't want to like try to spin this.
Okay, yeah.
Where it's like, it's all
This
a
is
blessing.
actually good.
Yeah, it's blessing in disguise, and it's all working together for your good, which is not, a lot of times that's the truth, and biblically that is the truth. It's all working together for your good.
Yeah, but we don't always want to hear that.
Well, also you can't have the perspective to know or ever see that in a lot of cases, and so that's not what this episode is going to be. Not telling you that, this is all going to work out better and it's a blessing in disguise. That's not what we're going to do here. Kind of what we were going to do, and really the only outline we gave this was we wanted those that are facing that, whether it's, with body, with the restructuring, or maybe your job, wherever you're at, it looks a lot different than you thought it was going to, or you're experiencing grief, divorce, all those things that we just mentioned. I want this episode to somehow make you feel like supported, seen. That sounds corny, but I do. And there's a couple of ways that I want to go through that. One, kind of a biblical example, and then talking a little about our personal experiences with this, because that's really all we got, right?
That's it.
And then to wrap it up, probably I feel like we always end up thinking of like ways we can do better.
Well,
It's kind of the idea.
Yeah.
Hopefully. So the first thing that came to my mind with this, in trying to make people feel, I don't know, seen and supported through this and kind of commiserate with people, is I was thinking of Job.
Yes.
And in the Bible, and so did nothing wrong. God basically allowed the devil to infiltrate and do everything but take his life.
Right.
And so he went from successful, great family life. Life was good. Nice place, all the things. Literally, you can read about it. I'm giving the general scope here, but
The Cliff Notes.
yeah. Was in a really good spot. And then all of that, one by one, was stripped away until it was literally just him, and not even his health. He didn't even have his health. He was sickly. And the best thing that his friends did for him is, I think he had 3 friends that came. And they came to his place and just sat with him. And it says, I think the Bible says that they sat with him for like 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the best thing that they did for him, was just be there with him. And if you read past that, and I've done this in a recent Bible study, it's funny. The second that they start opening their mouths and trying to talk to him, it all goes south so quickly.
As it does with most of us.
And so that's why I was sitting here saying, like, we are not going to sit here and tell you, like, it's all going to be fine, and here's what you need to do, and just think of it this way. And, because they were telling Job, they were like, Job, you must have done something wrong. Like, clearly,
that's the only answer.
That's the only answer, is that this, and so many times, that's what's in our head. Is
no, sometimes our head naturally goes there when things go wrong. It's like, oh, I must have not been living right.
Yeah, well, even that, or it's just like from the outside looking in, the bystanders always have the answer of what you need to do, And so I just want to think about that here, and think about that as you're maybe trying to support someone going through something where they're facing a lot of uncertainty. The best thing that Job's friends did for him was just be with him.
Mm-hmm.
And the less they talked, the better it was. The more they talked, the worse it was. And so that's basically the biblical example that I wanted to give. And then I wanted us to kind of talk about our personal experiences in facing uncertainty, and how we've dealt with that, anything that we've learned, or things that we're still working through, not doing well, or whatever.
No, you didn't tell me that part.
Well, I don't know.
Snuck that one on me.
Sorry. So, facing uncertainty, Brian.
Yeah, so we took this different ways, I think.
I think it's good though.
No, I think it'll work out fine. Now to your point about Job, maybe we should talk less here. I don't know.
Yeah, this will be a shorter episode.
I will say most of the time when we're doing these, we'll have a stopwatch going just to kind of see, like, all right, here's where we're at. This is about how long we are. It's a good ramble meter checker sometimes.
Yeah.
And this time I have it set a lot less, because if I talk too much about this, A, it'll go in circles, and B, it'll start to sound preachy. So,
which is not the goal.
Definitely not going to do that. So when you brought it up, my head went. Uncertainty kind of leads to anxiety to me, and I am an anxious person, I think, naturally. And a planner. I'm always trying to plan these things out, figure out how we're going to get from A to B, and we're going to do it this way, and this is going to work. And time again, you find out that's just not going to be what happens.
Right.
Just like our oven coming today. But you just roll with it. Now, I will say, for all of that I carry, and I'll get to this more in the personal side of it, but I try to pivot.
You do pivot well.
Now, some of these situations are a little bit different of pivoting than others, but we'll get to that part later. So one of the things that I first thought about when all this was happening, because you brought this up last week, was the port strike. And it was really kind of funny to me internally, because like I said, this is almost like therapeutic for me to talk to, because my natural uncertainty just like makes me clam up. When it first started coming out, I think I was talking to my mom, and she was like, go get your toilet paper. It's the running joke in this town for sure, probably everywhere else, of, there's going to be a run at the stores. You need to stock up. And we always shop on Sundays. So it was kind of beginning of the week. We'd already gone shopping for the week. And my initial reaction was, I don't care. Yeah. I'm not worried about this. I'm not going to let this slow me down. We're not going to run to the store. We got our food for the week. We're good. Whatever. Right. And I was fine. And so when the strike was announced and everything, I was like, no big deal. I want to say it was like Wednesday, Thursday, something like that. And I was like, no big deal. and then it's just funny how quickly it'll kind of turn on you. I think you saw a picture on social media of like our local HEB, and
Yeah.
like the toilet paper aisle, of course, was empty.
Yeah, like completely empty.
Yeah, and I think that was after they'd restocked already once.
Mm-hmm.
And it just is funny how like the group think and everything will come over you. Like I instantly text you, and because I was at work and I didn't have time, I'm like in my head like, should I go to the store here? I wonder if they're bad here. I'm starting to think of like food, canned goods. Like my head just starts going to all these places.
Yeah.
Of like, I thought we were good, but what's going to happen next Sunday?
Yeah.
If this is
all
still
gonna be
going
gone.
on. Yeah, if this is still going on, we got to go get ours now.
Mm-hmm.
And really what that took me to was I straight up texted you like, go to the store now, drop whatever you're doing and go. And now, granted, this is with the hindsight of that didn't last long. I mean, everything that I thought was going to happen was true. I was like, this isn't going to go on long. It's not going to screw everything up. I've read some things. We're not going to like run out of food in a week. But you can't help yourself get caught up in that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's normal. But I will say for me, what I was thinking through, and this is applicable to a lot of different situations. When it comes to, I'll use the funny one, the toilet paper. If you were at home and everyone buys, well, I assume everyone does what we does and does what we do and buys like 15 or the mega roll, and so you get like 12 at a time. If you did what we do and you've got like 8 rolls left, and you ran out and bought another 2, okay, now you've got 6 months worth of toilet paper at your house. I'm not judging you for doing it. I'm just saying maybe sit there and say, why did I just do that? And as I said, I'm the first one. I told you, go out and get some, and we had toilet paper. Now, did we have toilet paper for the next 3 weeks? No. But we had toilet paper for 2 weeks. And yet my head still went to like, we need to go do this. And like I said, it's hindsight 2020. Do you think it's like past it?
Partaking in the drama of it all?
That probably actually is a big part of it. I think for a lot of us, it's like, it's almost like the sense of community probably when you're at the store with everyone like, oh, let's all grab our toilet paper. But I'm going to take it to a slightly darker place of think about all the people that maybe were out of toilet paper.
Yeah.
That now went, because it's fun. We all get, I do think you're right. Like a lot of it is getting caught up in the drama of it. And I think I was too. But I'm sitting here thinking now, and probably a lot of this is on the back of Hurricane Helene and now looking at Milton coming down the pike and what that's doing to people. And for us in our area, we had shortages of very few things for like 2 days, and people get in a panic. Well, imagine if like you don't know when your next meal's coming because your house is gone.
Right.
And there is, with those roads getting wiped out and everything, like, people are having problems getting to other people. Like some of these people are legitimately stranded.
Right.
And so I think on the back of that, it kind of put in a different perspective to me of just kind of, are we
how greedy we can be?
Yes. And are we looking out for others? And that's kind of tying into like when we were doing the big bad political episode and kind of like think about how we were talking about like immigration and, how God tells us to treat, you yourself were an immigrant. Like, now this may be a stretch for somebody, but I'm just saying like how we're treating each other. And so that just got me thinking about all of it between those two events of if we're running out there and we're grabbing toilet paper, why? We're possibly taking it from someone who needs it, legitimately needs it. And then 2, if we do have it, how out front are we about making sure everyone knows like, hey, I'm here to help you? Because I think that's the thing is, yes, like kind of where I get caught in these two things is trust in the Lord in everything.
Mhm.
But also, the Lord created all of us. We should also be able to depend on each other.
Yes.
And like the good example, again, stick with the toilet paper here. When it did happen,
Mhm.
like I said, we were good. We were riding high, man.
I don't know. We had like a week's left maybe because I was a little bit nervous about it. But
We
to your
had paper
point,
products. Things could happen. We would be fine.
I'm a stickler about my quality level
Yeah.
on toilet paper, so I
Well,
don't know that that would have flown for me.
the rest of us are boys in this house. We would have been fine. We could have
Guess
just
so.
rationed off for you
Now,
and
now you're gonna make me like go home and hide. When I get into the house tonight, I'm gonna like hide my own.
get your own secret stash.
Yeah. Um. But to your point, I think this is a point you were about to make. We got home and like that same day, my brother who lives out here came over and was like,
Do
"Are
you
y'all
guys need
good?
toilet paper?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you
and my
guys
my
need
parents
toilet
got toilet
paper?"
paper too.
Yeah, he was like, "We just came from Costco, last week and already had like we're stocked up. So if y'all need any, let us know."
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of where my head was just like, how well are we? Because we all get caught up in our own world. And like I said, I'm the first to say it. I told you, run out there and grab
Yeah.
as much toilet paper as you can.
Yeah.
And
We're
and
not
then
like demeaning anyone that
yeah,
went and stocked up.
fortunately, you weren't able to go. Otherwise, I'd be one of these people sitting here with like 6 months supply of toilet paper. But and so I'm glad we weren't able to.
Right.
Um, but
The thought process is good. And what I liked about it too is um we're sitting here talking about like are we here to just partake in the drama? Is that why we're going and like
yeah,
we're sending around
I like how
do
I
y'all
wasn't even
have
thinking about that.
I think it is the drama. And so rather than do that, what if we did like take my brother's approach and just like texted family or something and said like, "Are y'all good on you're good on toilet paper?" We're just sticking with this example, but like, what if we just focus kind of on what if we all focused on our inner circles?
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm gonna bring up something completely random, but hurricane has me thinking. I talked to people who were living in Houston during Ike, and we were talking about the differences between this last hurricane and that one. And a big one was social media was a lot different. There
Mm.
was not. I mean that was like 2007 or 8, something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so there wasn't all the communication and stuff like that. But ironically, um, when that happened, like the whole streets were like, hey, if one person had a generator, they got a deep freeze going, everyone emptied out, and they kind of community just
Yeah.
like barbecued and stuff like that. And then this last time, I mean, I wasn't around every single person, but it's just, the ironic thing about social media and every way we live in this world is we're actually a lot more closed off.
Yes. We're a
Like
lot more
we're
like
we're all
distanced.
connected on the internet, but in reality,
Yeah.
I don't want to see you.
No, and that's kind of what I'm getting at is like, what if we just like started a group chat with a group text with our inner circle and was
Yeah.
like making sure everybody was okay rather than, posting our haul of toilet paper on the internet.
Yeah, and so that's a past thing. The port
Mm-hmm.
strike's obviously over. Yet we still have a lot of people with Hurricane Helene, and now Milton's on the way, and that one turned into a Cat 5. That one looks like it's
Yeah.
just going to be total destruction of whatever it crosses, I think, later on this week. And once again, so now it's similar. Now us living here, it's like we're the people that's got 6 months worth of toilet paper.
Yeah.
And I don't have the right answer for this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying just anyone who tells you they're giving money to these people to just throw whatever in.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, and I'm like I said, I'm trying to figure out for myself what's the right way here.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to be the ones extending ourselves and like, hey, I got an extra roll.
Yeah.
Send this one to Florida or
Yeah.
Tennessee or whatever. I mean, I don't know. That's just kind of when there is all this uncertainty. I think one thing, I guess my point with this is how is our community coming together to help?
Mm-hmm.
To the example of what you were saying about Job, I liked that of they just at first sat there like, you don't have to be having the answers for everybody.
Yes.
Um,
That's what I think. I think everybody these days wants to post the comment that everybody's like, "Oh, very well said,"
yeah.
and like likes your comment or whatever.
No, you just need to be there. Like in this, like
Yeah.
in this example, maybe slightly differently from Job. Like I'm not saying just sit there and say, "Yeah, I understand," but like just also part of that.
Show up.
Yeah, you can take that as showing up, doing
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. No, I think so. Um. So going into my personal experiences a
Ooh,
little bit, I took this a different way, obviously, because
naturally.
well, because I was still more stuck on and commiserating with the all of my friends that do body.
Yeah, that doesn't show up on my timeline.
um, and like we said, I recently kind of went through something similar,
Yeah,
and I say recently, it's been over a year now, but the kind of goes more to the point. It still sucks.
yeah, I can tell.
Yeah, it still sucks, and it still stings. Like there's just the kind of the hurt and the emotions and everything. And I was thinking about this the other day too. Mourning like the loss of your coworkers, kind of.
Yeah,
And I think that's definitely what all of these people with the community of body are mourning. Also,
yeah, even more so than probably most of us with the normal 9 to 5.
yes, because that was what it was all built on for them, and it may still end up looking somewhat similar. Like they may have some of that going on. They
Yeah,
may
I
not
don't know.
lose all of that, but it kind of goes more to the point of like there's just a lot of uncertainty around it right now.
Yeah,
The company has said like there will be more coming out, at the end of this month and the end of next month and all this stuff. So the uncertainty level is terrible, but I think also a lot of them are probably just feeling a lot of conflicting emotions because on the one hand, this is the company, and I'm talking about body here specifically, but I think this is really relevant for most situations that you find yourself in with a job. It's like, on the one hand, it provided you a great opportunity at one point in
yeah,
time. But on the other hand, you feel very hurt with how this went down and like kind of shocked by it. I can't, watching their stories and stuff, I haven't seen anybody say they knew this was coming.
yeah.
Maybe things were changing and stuff, but nobody knew this was coming. Similar to how my experience went over a year ago. I did not know this was coming. And so it's your ego, your pride takes a hit there. Even though people can tell you like, wow, there's nothing you could have done about this. Yeah, but it still sucks.
Right.
And like I said, you go through all these emotions of like hurt, frustrated, grateful for the opportunity that you had. You're already like missing your coworkers and all this stuff that I'm just sure I can just like, I very much empathize with all of them. And so again, like I said in the beginning, I'm not going to spin this as, oh, this is a blessing in disguise.
Here's what you do.
Because while I believe Romans 8:28 that says all things work together for the good of those that serve the Lord, I believe that. But I also I do not pigeonhole God. I don't claim to know or ever see or have his perspective on things. And because of that, I know while it is all working together for the good of those that love him, that looks a lot differently for all of us. And sometimes we don't see all of it until the end or till a lot later anyway.
Yeah. All the pieces don't always come together at once.
Yeah, exactly. And luckily I trust him through that. And that is the one, thing that I will say as far as like encouragement for us Christians is like the peace that we can have with God. And I'll also say like in my lowest times, and I'm not even just talking about like over a year ago when this happened to me. But when I think back on all my lowest times in life, that's where I have felt closest to God. And I think it's because I was thinking about this because I was like, why is that? Is it just because we like cling to him whenever times are really bad and forget to praise him when times are
Right.
good? And I don't think it's just that. I think it's that you get when you're in those low times, you are so helpless yourself that you're just almost you have to be surrendered
Mm-hmm.
to
Oh, I agree.
God's plan. And in those times, even us control freaks are realizing how very little control we have
Right.
over our lives and how much we have to surrender to God.
Well, it makes you more vulnerable.
Makes you more vulnerable. And I will also say, I feel like it's the clearest that I've ever heard him
Yes.
on things. And you made a good point earlier. You were like, it's because we don't have the answers. So at that point, any thought that you have is almost like any thought towards direction that you have is almost got to be from him, because
Well, you're not putting up walls.
you're not putting up walls. You're not trying
You're
to
not trying to
control.
pigeonhole God. You're just
Yes.
You're helpless. You're vulnerable. So
Yes.
therefore, you're more willing to accept His voice.
Yes. And also, while I won't say that those times don't come without, it's your anxiety, your anxiousness over what's coming next.
Mm-hmm.
I will say it's also like some of the more weightless I've felt because it's like,
Yeah.
look, whatever is going to be is going to be.
It's just what it's going to be.
And in that way you feel kind of like weightless.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like those times in your life are few and far between with like the weights of the world and everything. Those times where you kind of do feel, I keep saying weightless, but like
You're at your peak of using that. You can't say it anymore.
Because it's not just helplessness. It's like, nope. I guess surrender is the right time.
Yeah.
Right word. When you are that surrendered to God, it's just those moments are hard to come by with how much that we try to and are called to control different parts of our lives. I mean, we're called to work and we're called to provide for our families and things like that. And so we have to be responsible with all that. But those times that you're just in complete surrender, those are times that you feel closest to God. I think that's how I felt. And it's a chance at kind of like realigning your priorities. Because I remember us having conversations about, okay, well, this is an opportunity. I remember saying over and over, like, the world is my oyster, like just
Right.
trying to figure it out. And so it is a chance at kind of a new beginning and realigning your priorities. So in that way, it's a good thing too. But the only other thing that I wanted to say in regards to this is, God can handle our anger and frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Like even in reading Job, it's like Job's not sitting there praising God through all of it. Not that he ever curses God. That's the the thing that he keeps being called to do, and he doesn't do it. But you know, God can handle our anger and our frustration. He is God. Like he is God. He can handle that. He can handle, I think of people who are going through suffering through grief and divorce and probably feeling very angry with the way that things are turning out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to say that God can handle all of that. He can handle your grief. He can empathize better than, anybody you know. He can handle your anger and frustration. So don't feel like you have to keep that from him.
No, for sure.
And it's kind of like Haley and I were talking about last week. It's my favorite part of the episode that we did last week on.
We already did recap.
Yeah, I know. On the happiness advantage was, and it's way at the end. So, spoiler alert, you have to listen to the whole thing. But Haley brought up David's Psalms. And so the book of
Yes.
Psalms.
Yes.
So in the beginning, all of his Psalms are just all of this lamenting and woe is me and all of this stuff. And then at the very end, he would say something along the lines of, but God, you're still good.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, the lamenting, and it took time. It's not like
Mm-hmm.
it was overnight, but over time, that lamenting kind of narrowed and the praise grew. And so that's kind of what I mean by like God can handle our anger, our frustration,
Mm-hmm.
and just end it with, but God, you're good, or however you can get that out. And, it's like God says in Scripture, the faith of a mustard seed, that's all he needs. And he can grow it from there, and he can do big things from there. So, um, I think that's all of my notes that I wanted to say on on uncertainty. Oh, the only other thing, and
Oh,
I
there we go.
stop. The only other thing that I was thinking about is, a lot of us, we all, if you're sitting here, maybe you are, and listening, maybe you are the person that is going through this in some, they're facing the uncertainty, however that may look.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or maybe we all know somebody who's going through something like this. And I think I always try to think of like how I always want to have the right words if I see somebody, you
Yes.
know, like you just really want to have the right words that comfort them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as we've mentioned, a lot of times they're not there. Like we can't come up with them. And so one of the things that I was thinking about and like, how can we do better? What do you say to somebody who's going through this that doesn't make them, you know, defensive almost, or
Mm-hmm.
like, somebody else's comments who doesn't understand? Um, and I was thinking, I actually went back to like our sales training that
Of
I do with
course.
salespeople. And one of the things that we talk about is doing a cushion statement. So, for example, if a customer comes and they've had a bad experience with you, a lot of times we want to go right to the solving portion and say, oh, yeah, I know our crew was late, but
Right.
they were in heavy traffic and, they should have called, but blah, blah, and go right into like solving the issue.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to teach a cushion statement, or I like to just call it, the acknowledgement. So, if our customer has a problem, because our crew was late, I don't just jump right to the solution or giving
Mm-hmm.
excuses, but I try to acknowledge what that must have done to their day. And so I think we can all kind of take a lesson from that here when people are facing things and maybe we don't have all the right words because we aren't plugged into their life,
Mm-hmm.
but we want to say something. I think if you can think about how best to acknowledge what they might be going through without trying to
Mm-hmm.
give some advice or, um, some kind of nugget that's going to magically help them. If you can just say, like, for example, somebody looking at the uncertainty of not knowing what their job is going to be in the future, if you can just say, like, man, I know that gig that you had it was so impactful,
Mm-hmm.
and just leave it at that. Don't offer anything else. We don't have to have the answers. Or if somebody is the grief one is really hard, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you haven't gone through something like that, what do you even say? Um, and I think that you just say as little as possible.
Right.
Like you just say, I cannot imagine, and just leave it at that. Um,
And that's good enough.
and that's good enough. Um, so sometimes we feel the need to say more, but we should stop. Like we should now.
Are
um,
you sure?
yeah, I think so. Do you have anything else?
No.
Are you choosing to stop?
Yeah. Um. We'll wrap this up now. I told you if I have my stopwatch. If we go too long, then it's rambling.
It's rambling. Yeah, I think we're to that point.
Yeah. Um.
So next week,
Next week we're gonna kind of maybe
we
tie
have an
some of these
idea.
things together.
Yeah.
And kind of look at this thing on the macro level. Um, I will say it seems like we've kind of looked at uncertainty and kind of anxiety on like all the negative things, but these things can, even if you're not going through like, hey, my job title just got knocked out or something, or thinking about the hurricanes and stuff. A lot of us are dealing with this on everyday aspects of normal,
Well, even
ordinary
like
life.
money.
Yeah, exactly.
Uncertainty of bills being paid and stuff.
All of us
Yeah.
have things going on with that. The number one answer is always trusting in the Lord, reading the Bible, prayer, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But in the real context of your day-to-day kind of additional ways to get through that, I think focusing on not getting caught up on thinking you have everything figured out is step one. As someone who deals with a lot of just anxiety, anxiousness, like sometimes I just have to take a breath and say, like, you know what? I don't know how this is going to go. Ultimately, number one, I'm a trust in God, but two, just be excited with where life's going to lead you. I think, and we'll kind of
content with what you have. We talked about that earlier.
And we'll kind of continue this more into the next week because we're kind of going to build on this. But
yeah, I like how you said. I think we're going to look at it from a macro.
Yeah,
level.
like just as a one example in the political realm, I keep up with that stuff. If candidate one does one thing or candidate two does another, if one wins, one loses, we get swept up. What's the economy going to do? What's my job going to look like? What's my day-to-day? Are we all going to have to drive battery cars, or are we going back to horses to get to work and stuff like that? And I can very much get swept up in that kind of stuff. And I think it's just important to your number one is God's not going to fail you. And even if the world fails you, God's not going to. So it's all going to be fine. But I really, as of late, and like I said, this is therapeutic for me. I may have to go back and listen to this one too. But I try to view life as an excitement. I don't know the answer to the story yet. I don't know how it's going to go. So just try to enjoy the ride on it. So that's going to wrap us up for today. I think we're going to continue this on a little bit. I don't know what we'll call the next one, but it's going to kind of be just how, as a society, we should be acting as Christians. I think it's going to kind of be maybe
what we try to sort through.
Yeah, we'll come up with something catchier for that.
I'm not there yet, but I'll work on it. I got a whole week. Maybe less.
My stopwatch is running out, so I won't recap anything else. But now that we have probably rambled, definitely unpacked uncertainty, you go discuss.